Hello! It is Friday evening and I thought that I would do a reading vlog this weekend since I have some varied reading plans. So first up, I want to finish The Fate of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. I'm on page 296 of 515. I think it is, so not too much further to go on there. I'd like to make some real progress with this tonight, but I don't think I'll finish it tonight. I will hopefully finish it tomorrow. Once I have finished that, I would like to read Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin O'Leary Sands. This is not an author that I've ever read before, but I have heard some very good things about this book, and I mentioned in my 2019 goals that I would like to try and broaden my reading a little bit this year by reading some genres that are usually outside of what I read. So this is actually a contemporary book and it's not too long. I think it's about 300 and something pages. Oh. It's 358 pages, I think. So depending on when I finish The Fate of the Tearling, there is a small possibility that I will finish that today. Definitely won't be finishing it today. This weekend, because it's not incredibly long, and just through a flick through, it looks like there's quite a lot of dialogue in this one, which is usually quite quick to read. So hopefully I'll be able to finish that one this weekend, and if I find time, I would also like to read volume 6 of Full Metal Alchemist. It's been a while since I've read any of this, so it would be quite nice to pick it up because it's the last one in this bind-up. I definitely want to finish The Fate of the Tearling, and the reason I'd quite like to finish this one is because the Fairy read-along of the book Circle of Shadows starts on Monday, and I would like to start at the same time because the last read-along I was playing catch-up for the first couple of days, so I missed out on some of the online chats about the book. So I'd like to start Circle of Shadows straight away on Monday if I can. And those are my reading plans. As for my weekend plans, the reason I picked this weekend to vlog is because it's one of the very few weekends where I'm actually probably going to be going out. So I think I'm going to be going to Westfield tomorrow, Saturday, because it's my friend's birthday next week and I need to pop into town to pick her up something for her birthday and send it to her. And I think I'm also, there's quite a big library at Westfield, and it's supposed to be really good, and it was sort of updated and things a few years ago, I think, at the same time as Westfield. So I kind of want to pop in there and sign up for that library because they have quite a good online catalogue of audiobooks and things, which my current library doesn't have. So I'd like to sign up for that one so that I can borrow some audiobooks as and when I want to. And also I want to see if they have some manga or graphic novels or comics at all, because the library I'm signed up to doesn't, or not that I've been able to find anyway. And I'd like to try reading more graphic novels, manga, comics, because I've really enjoyed reading Full Metal Alchemist, but the problem is they are quite expensive and it's still quite a new sort of, not really genre, but type of reading experience for me, so I don't want to invest too much money on buying a load of graphic novels if I don't know that I'm going to like them. I don't necessarily mind buying them after I've read them if I really liked them and think I want to reread them, but I think that being able to borrow them from the library would be good. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the library tomorrow while I'm at Westfield and see if they have any graphic novels or manga or comics or anything, and if they do, I will probably borrow a bunch, and I might do a library haul maybe at the weekend. We'll see. Anyway, those are my weekend plans. I will check in with you and give you synopses of all of those books later and let you know my thoughts on The Fate of the Tearling, since I'm halfway through that one now. But that's it for now, and I will check in with you guys a little bit later on. Hello, let's talk about these books, shall we? I've got about 20 minutes until my dinner is ready, so I thought now would be as good a time as any to tell you what these books are about. The Fate of the Tearling is actually book 3 in a series, so I can't tell you what this one is about, but I will tell you what book 1 is about. So book 1 is The Queen of the Tearling, which I think is also the name of the series, and it follows a girl named Kelsey, and Kelsey is the heir to the throne of a land called Tear. And it's a land that she doesn't know very much about in terms of its current state of affairs, but she knows a lot about the history because she was raised by foster parents in a cottage in the woods to keep her safe until she came of age to take the throne. And when she does come of age, the Queen's Guard come to collect her and take her back to the capital so that she can ascend. However, as soon as they leave the cottage, they are chased by assassins, essentially. The regent, who has been ruling in her absence, really doesn't want to give up the throne. He's quite enjoying himself as regent of the land of Tyr and doesn't want this young girl coming in and taking away all his fun. So there's a lot of action right at the beginning of the book, but I'd say that the majority of the book is Kelsey finding herself, taking the throne, righting some of the wrongs that have happened in her land in her absence. So it's mostly political intrigue going on, and then there's some background mystery that I don't really want to go into because it's potentially spoilers, because it's not addressed quite as much in book 1 as it is in book 2 and 3. Pacing wise, book 1 is a little bit on the slower side. I wouldn't say it's necessarily slow, but it's not fast-paced either, whereas book 2 is definitely a lot more fast-paced, probably because you don't have as much world building, as much character building, as much scene setting as in the first book of a trilogy. I think that's quite normal. Book 1 is a lot of setup usually. Book 2 definitely didn't have middle book syndrome at all. I really enjoyed book 2. I'm now halfway through book 3 and I am enjoying The Fate of the Tearling as well. Not as much at this point as I was at this point in The Invasion of the Tearling, which is book 2, but I am still really enjoying it. And my opinions about books and series are very much swayed by how they end, so I'll definitely be interested to see if my thoughts and feelings have changed once I finish this book. But I am enjoying it. It is a good series. I'm glad I picked it up. I think it's pretty decent series to read if you're not so familiar with epic fantasy, because it definitely is epic fantasy, I'd say, but it's only on the cusp of being epic fantasy, I think, because it's not too complicated. There's not too much world building. It's not crazy difficult to follow or anything like that. So, and there is a reasonably large cast of characters, but not too many perspectives, so it's not so difficult to follow, and you get quite a lot of relationship with each of the side characters, so they're easy to follow as well. So I didn't find myself getting confused about who was who at the beginning of the story. And also, helpfully, this is one of those series where it hasn't got a load of crazy, impossible to pronounce names in it, which does make things easier. So I would recommend the series for people who are just starting out with epic fantasy, as well as for people who are established epic fantasy readers. I'm really enjoying it and I think it's really good. Ooh. Then we have Full Metal Alchemist, which is about two brothers, Edward and Alphonse Elric, who are alchemists, shocker, and their mother unfortunately dies, and they use alchemy to try to bring her back from the dead, but it goes horribly, horribly wrong. Edward loses an arm and Alphonse loses his entire body, and so in order to save his brother, Edward gives up a leg so that Alphonse's soul can be tied to a suit of armour. And they become state alchemists and get involved in solving all sorts of mysteries for the government, but also they are in search of a way to restore themselves to the men, well, boys really, that they once were, because these two characters are quite young. I can't actually remember off the top of my head how young they are, but they're under 18. I can't remember how old they are. Anyway, I was expecting this series to just be really funny, and it is, but it's also really dark in places, which I actually really enjoy and really appreciate. Not sure what that says about me, but it works and I really enjoy it, and because I've been enjoying it so much, this is kind of why I want to branch out and read a bit more manga and comics and graphic novels, because I really quite enjoy the visual elements of this kind of storytelling, and I want to see if it's just isolated to this particular series or whether I might like some other series as well. So that's that one. Then we have Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe, which is a very long name. This is contemporary, and that's pretty much all I know about it. So I'll read the blurb. Dante can swim, Ari can't. Dante is articulate and self-assured. Ari has a hard time with words and suffers from self-doubt. Dante gets lost in poetry and art. Ari gets lost in thoughts of his older brother who is in prison. Dante is fair-skinned. Ari's features are much darker. It seems that a boy like Dante, with his open and unique perspective on life, would be the last person to break down the walls that Ari has built around himself. But against all odds, when Ari and Dante meet, they develop a special bond that will teach them the most important truths of their lives and help define the people they want to be. But there are big hurdles in their way, and only by believing in each other and the power of their friendship can Ari and Dante emerge stronger on the other side. And that's all I know about it. Apart from I've heard a lot of good things and the title sounds intriguing, so I want to read it. I want to read more different genres this year, including contemporary. That one's been on my list for quite a while because I've heard quite a lot of good things about it here on BookTube, both about this book and about the author Benjamin O'Leary Sands in general. Like I mentioned earlier, doesn't look too long, doesn't look too laborious. The font and spacing is quite, oh, you can't really see that, can you? The font and spacing is quite reasonable. There's a lot of dialogue from my flick through, so I'm quite looking forward to reading that. It's going to be my first, it's going to be my first non-fantasy read this year, so that's good. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there for now. I am going to get some reading done. My dinner's going to be ready in about 10 minutes, and then I will probably watch YouTube for a while I eat, and then once I'm done eating I will probably, let's be honest with ourselves, still watch YouTube for a while, and then once I've done that, then I will pick this back up. Goal for tonight, I don't know, what do you guys think? I'm on page 297 of 515, so I mean, I guess it would be pretty good to get to about 265, because then, if my maths is right, if I got to 365, then I'd have 150 pages left. Is that right? I think that's right. It's been a long day. My maths might be off, but I think that that's right. So if I can get to 265, oh, actually, that's perfect, because page 365 is the start of book 3. So yeah, that's my goal for tonight, to get to the start of book 3 at least, because 150 pages tomorrow should be pretty achievable. And then, well, I can read 200 pages on a good weekend day, but I am planning on going out tomorrow, but 150 should be manageable. Then maybe I can read all of this on Sunday. It's possibly a bit ambitious. We'll see. And then, oh, I forgot to mention, I'm also, oh, let me grab my phone. I am also listening to Eragon on audio. Oh, why is that not working? Yes, there we go. I'm listening to Eragon on audio. I am 8 hours and 54 minutes in, and it's 16 hours and 22 minutes long. So I'm not going to finish it this weekend, but because I'm going out, I will probably get a reasonable chunk of this read while I'm out, because I will pop it on while I'm driving, and I will also listen to it whilst I am browsing the shops a little bit. Not as much. I'm not so great at browsing and listening, but we'll see. It's a reread, and I haven't done a reread while out shopping for a while. I mentioned in a couple of earlier videos that I'm swapping to using audiobooks exclusively for rereading, so we'll see if that makes any difference. But either way, I will be listening to a little bit of that here and there as well. Probably should tell you what Eragon is about. Eragon is a young adult, I think, fantasy series, but I think oddly it's almost like it's a high fantasy series but for young adults, which is a bit strange, but I feel like that's the genre. Anyway, we follow a main character named Eragon who stumbles upon a dragon egg in a world where the dragon riders have been gone for decades. The king has destroyed all of the dragon riders and dragons and is now the only dragon rider alive. But when Eragon finds this dragon egg, it hatches for him, and so he becomes the first dragon rider that isn't the king for a very long time. But when things have gone wrong because of him finding this dragon egg, he goes out on a quest for revenge, and he is learning what it means to be a dragon rider and what the impact of that is on his life. And it is a reread for me. As I mentioned, I read it for the first time my mid-teens, I want to say. I'm not entirely sure. It's not the best written book ever. I think if you didn't read it when you were younger, if you read it now, it doesn't really hold up, I don't think. If I was reading it for the first time now, I probably wouldn't be enjoying it at all. And I'm not as hooked on it as I was with, say, my last audiobook. So I have actually also picked up The Way of Kings, and if I'm not able to finish Eragon soon, then I might swap out between the two. But not this weekend. What I'd like to do is I'd like to finish Eragon and then listen to The Way of Kings and then listen to... Eldest is the second book in the Inheritance cycle, which is the name of the series that Eragon is the first book in. So yeah, that's my plans with that, but I will get some audiobook reading done this weekend. And my dinner is going to be ready in 5 minutes, which means that I've been speaking for 15 minutes now, so I am going to shut up and let's move along. I am about to feed the cats dinner, and I thought I would show you the excitement levels that are experienced in this flat at cat feeding time and at many other times throughout the day. This is the cat cupboard. They would have you believe that I never feed them. Okay, so I, as predicted, binged on YouTube for quite a while, and I've just fed the kittens, so now I am going to get down to some reading and I will check in again once I've made some progress. Hello, so I'm now on page 327, so I'm making good progress and things are starting to progress quite quickly now that we're getting into the last sort of third of the book. So I think we're going to have a long ending in this one. I feel like the pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together and things are starting to close up. And I think that that's because we're actually going to get a nice long ending in this one, which I like, and I hope that that's right, because I quite like it when the last chunk of a book is pretty action-packed and there's a lot of threads that still need to be tied up in this one, and we've got just over 150 pages left now, so, well actually, it's just under 200 pages left really, isn't it? About 180 something pages, but yeah, there's still a lot to wrap up, so I think that it's starting to wrap up now, which I like, because like I said, I like it when the wrap up takes quite a while. But I am going to take a break now from reading and have some pudding. I think I'm gonna have some ice cream and or maybe some chocolate. Let's be honest, probably and some chocolate rather than and or. And watch some more YouTube and then come back to my reading. It's only about 8:30 now, so I've still got plenty of time to get to my goal of 365 pages, which is only about 30 odd away now. So yeah, take a quick break and check back in later. Good morning, guys, or really it's 12:30, so I should say afternoon. I'm just getting ready to go out to Westfield shopping centre, and I figured I'd talk to you about my reading so far while I'm getting ready. So if I'm looking over here, that's because that is where my mirror is. Also, please excuse the crazy hair, I just dried it, it will settle down. So I haven't yet finished The Fate of the Tearling, but I am on page 376 now, and I'm still really enjoying it. It's difficult for me to talk about it with you really, because anything I do say is potentially spoilers for the first two books, but I do like that the fact that we continue to be introduced to new characters throughout the series. It's not just you get some characters in book one and then those are your characters throughout. You do actually get introduced to new characters, and there's still good character development with those new characters, so that's quite nice. And even though we're less than 150 pages from the end now, there's still a lot of mystery. So it's like I said last night, I think there's going to be a slow winding down of the plot and conclusion. So yeah, I'm still really enjoying it. I still don't really know how it's going to end, which I like, because I'm not particularly good at guessing the endings of books anyway, and guessing the resolutions of things. That's just not something I'm particularly good at. But if it is super predictable, then of course I will do. So I like that it's not super predictable, and there's still plenty to find out and figure out. It's not like the last section of the book is kind of just pointless winding down or anything. There's still lots that needs to be resolved, and I mean, to a certain extent I'm a little bit worried about that, because there's still so much to resolve, and there's still so much to resolve and not much time left to resolve it. So I'm hoping that, as I predict, that just means that the resolution is going to be quite quick but still last for the rest of the book. But then I'm hoping that all the strings sort of get tied up, because it would be really annoying if we're left with questions. I don't mind when there are questions at the end of a book in a series, but I do mind when there are questions left at the end of a series, because I kind of don't really see the point of that. I mean, I read the series because I was interested in the questions that were raised, and because I wanted to know what the answers to those questions were, not because I wanted to be left with more questions. So I'm hoping this isn't going to be one of those series that's all, you know, philosophical at the end, figure out what you want it to mean. I hate those kinds of endings. I'm not an overly imaginative person, so I quite like my endings to books to be conclusive, and I like the authors to do that work for me. I don't want to have to figure out... Basically, I just like the endings to be definitive. I don't want to have to figure out for myself what the ending means. That's just not something I'm particularly interested in. One thing I did just want to talk about, which I think is interesting, and I've read a couple of books like this recently, His Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman deals with similar issues, and that is the painting of religion as a damaging aspect to society. Now, I'm not a religious person at all. I don't believe in anything spiritual wise, but I understand how big of a part that is to so many people's lives, and so I do find it interesting when authors decide to paint religion as sort of, I mean, it's not an antagonist in this book. It definitely is in His Dark Materials. It's definitely an antagonist in that series, the church, I mean, because both His Dark Materials and the Queen of the Tearling series, they focus on Christianity as the religion in question. And in His Dark Materials, like I say, Christianity, the Christian church, is very much an antagonist in that series, and it's not so much an antagonist in this series necessarily, but it is painted as one of the problems within society, and I think that that's an interesting thing for authors to tackle, because it can very much, I think, or could very much be taken the wrong way as painting all religion as a bad thing. And actually, I don't think that's what Erica Johansson is trying to do. In this book, I think what she's actually trying to say is that religious extremism can be a problem, which I think is very true and is very relevant, because, you know, arguably terrorism is a form of religious extremism. Well, not even arguably, it's a form of religious extremism, and I think what Johansson does in this series is look at how something as innocent as faith can turn into extremism, and then if it does that, it becomes very damaging, and it can draw people into it, and people don't even realise that they're being drawn into these extreme views that can then be flipped on their head and made to very much ostracise certain parts of the community, and it can create a lot of unnecessary hate and judgment. And it's that specifically, not faith specifically, but that sort of extreme view that doesn't do what I think religion it was set up originally to do, which is to make people respect morals and live their life in a moral way alongside their faith. But then you get these extremist individuals who follow the letter of religion a little bit too closely, maybe, and that results in just judgment. And I think that that's what Erica Johansson is trying to address in these books, is that the religious characters in this series are not all exclusively fundamentally bad people. Some of them are just faithful people, and they have beliefs and they stick to them, but unfortunately other individuals take it just a little bit too far, and then that's to the detriment of society in general, and is causing turmoil within the society in this book, and it becomes a problem that needs to be solved rather than a positive thing, which is what I hope religion is for. Like I said, I'm not a religious person, so I'm definitely not an authority on this subject, but I would have thought that being faithful to any religion really would be just about that, be about faith and be about upholding certain beliefs, but within a way that's non-judgmental. Yeah, this is all a bit deep for first thing on a Saturday, isn't it? But I just find it interesting when authors decide to tackle a subject like this, because it could be so controversial, but I actually think it is an important discussion, and it's an important point to make that it's entirely possible to have faith and have religion without it going to that extremist level where it becomes dangerous. And that's one of the things that our characters deal with in this series, and I do think it's an interesting and brave choice for inclusion, because like I say, it can be such a controversial issue and it can be taken so much the wrong way. I don't think it should be. I think it should be seen as a positive thing, but I'd be interested to hear what anybody else thinks of these kinds of topics being included in books, because actually, like I said, I've seen it in 2 books very recently, and it's not something I ever necessarily noticed in my reading before, and it might just be, you know, that I've coincidentally read 2 books recently that have dealt with it, but I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye out for it more, because I would have thought that it would be the kind of thing that authors would stray away from, just so as not to alienate some readers who perhaps see it as more a surface level critique rather than an in-depth look at how wrong it can go and how wrong it really doesn't have to go. So yeah, but as you can see, my makeup is now done, my hair is less crazy, and I'm gonna get dressed and go to Westfield, I think. And I still haven't decided if I'm going to bring you along with me. I've never vlogged in public before, and I don't know how I feel about it, so we'll see. Maybe I'll take my camera and decide while I'm out, I'm not sure. Anyway, check you later. Hello, so I'm back again. I didn't end up doing any filming because the library that I went to was really disappointing. It was quite small, it was really busy, there were lots and lots of people there, but there weren't an awful lot of books, which I found slightly confusing considering it's a library and that's the main purpose of a library. But no, there weren't really very many books, there weren't very many comics. On the whole, it was just really disappointing, which was a real shame, because actually that library was had a lot of work done on it a few years ago, and so I kind of had really high hopes, and it was just a bit disappointing. And the stuff that I did at Westfield was really just errands, so yeah, there wasn't really much for me to film for you, unfortunately. I've been home now for quite a while. I may or may not have fallen asleep, and by may or may not I mean I did. So the reading progress is not so great. I'm only on page 423, so got like 90 something pages left, which isn't great progress. It's already 6:45. So I'm still hoping that I can finish this tonight, but I mean I have to finish this tonight. So I will finish The Fate of the Tearling tonight, I will, so that I can then pick up Aristotle and Dante tomorrow. I'm not planning to go out or anything, but I am going to have to film a video tomorrow. You can probably hear the boys, they want their dinner, which they can actually have in about 15 minutes, so that's fine. Yeah, I'm still enjoying the book. I'm just quite tired this evening because I was rushing around the shopping centre for a couple of hours, and that does always tend to tire me out. Yeah, not a lot else to report at this point, so I probably won't check in with you again until I have actually finished this book. Possibly that will be tomorrow morning, depending on what time I finish and if Lee is asleep. Bit of a boring day today for you, I'm afraid. I was hoping to get some footage while I was out, but all very dull, sorry. But yeah, I'm gonna crack on with reading now. Hello! So it's now Sunday afternoon, it's actually 2:30. I've been caught up with reading this morning, so sorry for not updating you sooner. I finished The Fate of the Tearling last night, and I was right to be worried. I did not enjoy the ending of this, the last maybe 2 chapters. Just not to my taste. I can see why some people would really like them, but I felt that the ending was quite lazy, and it also invalidated some of the things that had happened in books 1 and 2, made some of the things that happened in books 1 and 2, and even this book 3, completely redundant. We didn't get closure for all of our characters, and yeah, I just wasn't a fan of the ending, which is a real shame because I liked the rest of the book. Book 2 was still my favourite, even if we ignore the endings. Book 2 was still my favourite. It's Shinji rolling around in a box, but the ending really spoiled this one for me. I still gave it 4 stars because apart from the very end of the book, which like I say was the last 2 chapters, I enjoyed it, I liked it. It wasn't fantastic, but it was good and I liked it better than just fine. So I didn't really think that it was fair to put this down to 3 stars just on the basis of a single or 2 chapters which just weren't to my taste. I think that if the story was going to finish in the way that it did, that it could have been done better and we could have got a little bit more closure with some of our characters than we did. Having said that, we can kind of take an educated guess about how the story ends for the characters that we didn't get to officially say goodbye to. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to say too much more because this is a final book in a series and I'm talking about the very end of the series, so I'm not going to say any more than that. Still enjoyed the book, not a fan of the ending. That's not a huge surprise because I am very, very fussy about the endings of books, so there is that. But yeah, I finished it. I'm glad I read the series. I would still recommend it. Just be aware that the ending will not be for everyone. And then, after I finished that, which I finished last night, I did pick up Aristotle and Dante, Discover the Secrets of the Universe. And I only read, I think, 2 chapters last night, which is only about, like, let's see, 10 pages, 11 pages. So I've read a lot more of this morning. I'm now on page 100. As predicted, it is a quicker read than what I usually read. It's a little bit strange for me to read contemporary because I keep expecting world building and magic and complex character development, and there is character development in this, but it's just different because it's contemporary. I don't know how to describe it yet. This is the first contemporary that I've read, gosh, in a long time, maybe 10 years or more. I honestly can't remember the last time I read a contemporary book. Even like thrillers and things, I just don't read them. Most of what I read is fantasy, so this is a very different experience for me, but because we don't have all of that intense world building, that's why I think it's a quicker read, because I don't have to concentrate quite so much to take all of that in to be able to understand the story. I'm just sort of following the thoughts of our protagonist, Aristotle. It is first person past tense narrative, which I like. I definitely prefer, if it's going to be first person, I prefer past tense narrative rather than present tense. I just feel like it's a little bit more deep and reflective rather than so in the moment. And we still get in the moment emotions, but they're delivered in a more reflective way because they are past tense. I didn't know, I flicked to the back of the book to read the little bit about the author, Benjamin O'Leary Sands, not too long ago actually, while I was already sort of 80 pages in, and I wasn't surprised at all to read that he's a poet, because the narrative is quite poetic. My battery has just started flashing, so I think I'm going to have to stop shortly to charge the battery, but yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. It's very slice of life, it's very different for me, but I am enjoying it, and I'm actually hopeful that I actually might be able to finish this today because it's a quicker read than I'm used to. It's still 359 pages long, but I'm on page 100 and I was only reading for maybe an hour and a half this morning, so that's pretty quick for me to get that far into a book. And like I mentioned before, there is a lot of dialogue, which does also make it quicker. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far, and I'll check in with you later. Hello, I have been a really bad vlogger today and haven't kept you at all updated. I went over to my mum's house to see my mum and my grandma, who was staying the weekend, and I just kind of got caught up in that. It's now quite late. I think it's about 11:30. Usually I go to bed at 10 on a work night, but I stayed up to finish Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and I'll check in properly with you tomorrow because like I said, it's late and I need to go to bed, so I'll do a proper weekend reading summary for you tomorrow. But the quick notes version is that I really enjoyed this book. It was very melancholy and slice of life, which is completely unlike anything I usually read, but I really enjoyed it. I liked the characters, I liked the story, and yeah, it was a win for me. But I'll check in with you properly tomorrow. Hello! So it's now Monday evening. I just got home from work and I thought that I would finally update you on my reading over the weekend. So firstly, I finished The Fate of the Tearling, which is the third and final book in the Queen of the Tearling trilogy by Erica Johansson. I had around 219 pages left of this to read this weekend, and mostly I enjoyed it. I mentioned before that I didn't really care for the last couple of chapters. So this series follows a girl named Kelsey, who is the heir to the throne of a land called Tyr, and She is raised by foster parents in a cottage hidden out in the woods of the land, and when she comes of age, she is whisked off to the capital to take her throne, but almost immediately upon leaving, she is being chased down by a group of assassins, or really they're a group of mercenaries, who have been employed to assassinate her because the regent, who's been ruling in her absence, quite likes being in charge and doesn't really want to give up the throne or the crown or any of that to Kelsey, but she's not having any of it. And once she ascends the throne, she has to deal with the fallout of some policy decisions, shall we say, that have been made in her absence and that she's not really very happy about. There's a lot of dysfunction going on in her society, and she is a very principled character, and she wants to see and bring about change. So it follows her. The book is mostly, or the series is mostly from her perspective, but we do have some side characters that we follow occasionally as well. But like I say, she's the main character and we follow her the majority of the time. The second book was still my favourite. While I did enjoy this one, as I mentioned, I wasn't a massive fan of the ending. As I said before, I thought that it was a little bit lazy, a little bit clumsy, and I didn't get quite as much closure with all of the characters as I would have liked. And I think that the ending that was written could have worked for me if it had been written in a slightly different way. It's very difficult for me to say all of this because I don't want to give any spoilers. Would I still recommend the series? Yes, but bear in mind that the ending will not be for everyone, and also bear in mind that I am very, very fussy about the endings of books, and so just because I didn't like the ending doesn't mean that you won't. And I still enjoyed the books, it's just the last two chapters, two chapters that I would have preferred if the author had gone in a slightly different direction with that. But that's not bad to dislike any sort of, and I didn't even really dislike them, I just would have preferred a different ending. Anyway, then I picked up Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and I finished this book in its entirety. It's 359 pages long, and this is a contemporary book, which is not my usual genre at all, so it was a very different reading experience for me. It's sort of a slice of life, I think, really, and it follows two characters, Aristotle and Dante, but the whole story is told from Aristotle's perspective. It is first person perspective, but past tense, which I mentioned before is my preference. If something's going to be first person, I generally prefer it to be past tense because I just find it more reflective and deep. So I enjoyed the narrative. I could definitely tell that the author is also a poet. It was very, not lyrically written, but it was very to the point, and I think that that's something that poets pick up on because generally poetry is much shorter form than novels, and because of that they are pretty good at making their points quite quickly and not belabouring the point, basically. So I think that Hilary Sands did that really, really well in this book, and that contributed to how quick of a read this one was for me. As I expected, there is also a lot of dialogue in this book, which again sped up the reading experience. So it's been a long time since I finished a book in a day. I can't even remember the last time I finished a book in a day because I'm such a slow reader. But this book because it's contemporary, I didn't have any world building or magic systems to have to get my head around to slow down the reading experience. There was a lot of dialogue, which is quicker to read anyway, and the language used was very straightforward, to the point, and I didn't have to sort of sit there puzzling at any point about what something might mean. Not that I sit there and puzzle over things, but occasionally with a fantasy book I'll have to reread a sentence twice to try to visualise what it is the author is trying to get across, whereas with a contemporary, or certainly at least with this one, I didn't have to do that at all. I really enjoyed the relationships in this book. There isn't really a specific plot that I can tell you about because, like I say, it's slice of life. It really examines the relationship between Aristotle and Dante, who meet one summer and become friends, and also Aristotle's relationship with his parents, and most importantly his relationship with himself and discovering himself. They're 15 when they meet, and at the end of the book they're 17, which is a period of life that encompasses a lot of change and a lot of growth. So it was sort of examining that, really, and I really enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. I thought that it was very melancholy and introspective, but in a good way, and like I said, it was very well written. I really enjoyed the narrative and the way the author decided to write this story. I think some of the topics that were covered in this story were really interesting and they were really well approached. So definitely makes me want to read more contemporary, and I would also consider reading more by this author as well. I really enjoyed this one, and I'm really glad that I decided to have this as my first contemporary read of the year. So that's that one. I also continued with my audiobook of Aragon, but I couldn't tell you how much of it I read because it's an audiobook. I just read it as and when, so I have no idea. I probably listened to maybe an hour or two, maybe a bit more, I'm not sure. But in terms of the two books I read just under 600 pages between these two. It was 578 in total, so I'm really happy with that, because I said earlier in the vlog that usually on a good reading weekend where I don't actually do anything else other than read, I read about 400 pages. And this weekend I went out shopping for like 3 or 4 hours, and I went to see my family for about 3 or 4 hours, and during those periods of time I was not reading at all. So I'm really pleased with that, and I especially enjoyed this. This was quite a surprise. Not that I didn't think I would like it, but I didn't think that I'd feel quite so emotional about it, and I did feel quite emotional at points reading this book, which I liked. That hasn't happened for a while for me. So yeah, that's it for this vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button. I'd be so grateful, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!